A non-governmental organization is an organization that is neither a part of a government nor a conventional for-profit business. Usually set up by ordinary citizens, NGOs may be funded by governments, foundations, businesses, or private persons. Some avoid formal funding altogether and are run primarily by volunteers. NGOs are highly diverse groups of organizations engaged in a wide range of activities, and take different forms in different parts of the world. Some may have charitable status, while others may be registered for tax exemption based on recognition of social purposes. Others may be fronts for political, religious, or other interests. The number of NGOs in the United States is estimated at 1.5 million. Russia has 277,000 NGOs. India is estimated to have had around 2 million NGOs in 2009, just over 1 NGO per 600 Indians, and many times the number of primary schools and primary health centers in India. NGOs are difficult to define, and the term NGO is not always used consistently. In some countries the term NGO is applied to an organization that in another country would be called an NPO, and vice versa. There are many different classifications of NGO in use. The most common focus is on orientation and level of operation. An NGO's orientation refers to the type of activities it takes on. These activities might include human rights, environmental, improving health, or development work. An NGO's level of operation indicates the scale at which an organization works, such as local, regional, national, or international. The term non-governmental organization was first coined in 1945 when the United Nations was created. The UN, itself an intergovernmental organization, made it possible for certain approved specialized international non-state agencies, i.e., non-governmental organizations, to be awarded observer status at its assemblies and some of its meetings. Later the term became used more widely. Today, according to the UN, any kind of private organization that is independent from government control can be termed an NGO, provided it is not for profit, non-prevention, and not simply an opposition political party. One characteristic these diverse organizations share is that their non-profit status means they are not hindered by short-term financial objectives. Accordingly, they are able to devote themselves to issues which occur across longer time horizons, such as climate change, malaria prevention, or a global ban on landmines. Public surveys reveal that NGOs often enjoy a high degree of public trust, which can make them a useful, but not always sufficient, proxy for the concerns of society and stakeholders. Types. NGO types can be understood by their orientation and level of how they operate. By orientation, charitable orientation often involves a top-down paternalistic effort with little participation by the beneficiaries. It includes NGOs with activities directed toward meeting the needs of the poor peoples. Service orientation includes NGOs with activities such as the provision of health, family planning, or education services in which the program is designed by the NGO and people are expected to participate in its implementation and in receiving the service. Participatory orientation is characterized by self-help projects where local people are involved, particularly in the implementation of the project by contributing cash, tools, land, materials, labor, etc. In the classical community development project, participation begins with the need definition and continues into the planning and implementation stages. Empowering orientation aims to help poor people develop a clearer understanding of the social, political and economic factors affecting their lives, and to strengthen their awareness of their own potential power to control their lives. There is maximum involvement of the beneficiaries, with NGOs acting as facilitators. By level of operation, community-based organizations arise out of people's own initiatives. They can be responsible for raising the consciousness of the urban poor, helping them to understand their rights in accessing needed services, and providing such services. Citywide organizations include organizations such as chambers of commerce and industry, coalitions of business, ethnic or educational groups, and associations of community organizations. National NGOs include national organizations such as the YMCAs, YWCAs, professional associations, and similar groups. Some have state and city branches and assist local NGOs. International NGOs range from secular agencies such as Dusera Foundation and Save the Children organizations, Oxfam, Curve, Ford Foundation, and Rockefeller Foundation to religiously motivated groups. They can be responsible for funding local NGOs, institutions and projects and implementing projects. Apart from NGO, there are many alternative or overlapping terms in use, including third sector organization, non-profit organization, voluntary organization, civil society organization, grassroots organization, social movement organization, private voluntary organization, self-help organization and non-state actors. In Spanish, French, Italian and other Romance languages, the MIRID abbreviation, ONG, is in use, which has the same meaning as NGO. Governmental-related organizations, non-governmental organizations are a heterogeneous group. As a result, a long list of additional acronyms has developed, including BINGO, Business-Friendly International NGO, or Big International NGO, SBO, Social Benefit Organization, a positive, goal-oriented designation as a substitute for the negative, non-designations. TANGO, Technical Assistance NGO, TSO, Third Sector Organization, GONGO, Government-Operated NGOs, DONGO, Donor-Organized NGO, INGO, International NGO, QUANGO, Quasi-autonomous NGO, such as the International Organization for Standardization, National NGO, a non-governmental organization that exists only in one country. This term is rare due to the globalization of non-governmental organizations, which causes an NGO to exist in more than one country. CSO, Civil Society Organization, ENGO, Environmental NGO, such as Greenpeace and WWF, NNGO, Northern NGO, PANGO, Party NGO, set up by parties and disguised as NGOs to serve their political matters, SNGO, Southern NGO, SCO, Social Change Organization, TNGO, Transnational NGO. The term emerged during the 1970s due to the increase of environmental and economic issues in the global community. TNGO includes non-governmental organizations that are not confined to only one country, but exist in two or more countries. GSO, Grassroots Support Organization, MANGO, Market Advocacy NGO, NGDO, Non-Governmental Development Organization. USAID refers to NGOs as private voluntary organizations. However, many scholars have argued that this definition is highly problematic as many NGOs are in fact state or corporate funded and managed projects and have professional staff. NGOs exist for a variety of reasons, usually to further the political or social goals of their members or founders. Examples include improving the state of the natural environment, encouraging the observance of human rights, improving the welfare of the disadvantaged, or representing a corporate agenda. However, there are a huge number of such organizations and the goals cover a broad range of political and philosophical positions. This can also easily be applied to private schools and athletic organizations. Track 2 Diplomacy. Track 2 Dialogue, or Track 2 Diplomacy, is transnational coordination that involves non-official members of the government including epistemic communities as well as former policymakers or analysts. Track 2 Diplomacy aims to get policymakers and policy analysts to come to a common solution through discussions by unofficial means. Unlike the Track high diplomacy where government officials, diplomats and elected leaders gather to talk about certain issues, Track 2 diplomacy consists of experts, scientists, professors and other figures that are not involved in government affairs. The members of Track 2 diplomacy usually have more freedom to exchange ideas and come up with compromises on their own activities. There are also numerous classifications of NGOs. The typology the World Bank uses divides them into operational and advocacy. NGOs do vary in their methods. Some act primarily as lobbyists, while others primarily conduct programs and activities. For instance, an NGO such as Oxfam, concerned with poverty alleviation, might provide needy people with the equipment and skills to find food and clean drinking water, whereas an NGO like the FFDA helps through investigation and documentation of human rights violations and provides legal assistance to victims of human rights abuses. Others, such as Afghanistan Information Management Services, provide specialized technical products and services to support development activities implemented on the ground by other organizations. NGOs were intended to fill a gap in government services, but in countries like India and China, NGOs are slowly gaining a position in decision-making. In the interest of sustainability, most donors require that NGOs demonstrate a relationship with governments. State governments themselves are vulnerable because they lack economic resources, and potentially strategic planning and vision. They are therefore sometimes tightly bound by a nexus of NGOs, political bodies, commercial organizations and the major donors, funders, making decisions that have short-term outputs but no long-term effect. In India, for instance, NGOs are under-regulated, political, and recipients of large government and international donor funds. NGOs often take up responsibilities outside their skill ambit. Governments have no access to the number of projects or amount of funding received by these NGOs. There is a pressing need to regulate this group while not curtailing their unique role as a supplement to government services. Operational NGOs seek to achieve small-scale change directly through projects. They mobilize financial resources, materials, and volunteers to create localized programs. They hold large-scale fundraising events and may apply to governments and organizations for grants or contracts to raise money for projects. They often operate in a hierarchical structure, a main headquarters being staffed by professionals who plan projects, create budgets, keep accounts, and report and communicate with operational field workers who work directly on projects. Operational NGOs deal with a wide range of issues, but are most often associated with the delivery of services or environmental issues, emergency relief, and public welfare. Operational NGOs can be further categorized by the division into relief-oriented versus development-oriented organizations, according to whether they stress service delivery or participation, whether they are religious or secular, and whether they are more public or private-oriented. Although operational NGOs can be community-based, many are national or international. The defining activity of operational NGOs is the implementation of projects. Campaigning NGOs seek to achieve large-scale change promoted indirectly through influence of the political system. Campaigning NGOs need an efficient and effective group of professional members who are able to keep supporters informed and motivated. They must plan and host demonstrations and events that will keep their cause in the media. They must maintain a large informed network of supporters who can be mobilized for events to garner media attention and influence policy changes. The defining activity of campaigning NGOs is holding demonstrations. Campaigning NGOs often deal with these issues relating to human rights, women's rights, children's rights. The primary purpose of an advocacy NGO is to defend or promote a specific cause. As opposed to operational project management, these organizations typically try to raise awareness, acceptance and knowledge by lobbying. press work and activist event. Both operational and campaigning. It is not uncommon for NGOs to make use of both activities. Many times, operational NGOs will use campaigning techniques if they continually face the same issues in the field that could be remedied through policy changes. At the same time, campaigning NGOs, like human rights organizations, often have programs that assist the individual victims they are trying to help through their advocacy work. Public relations. Non-governmental organizations need healthy relationships with the public to meet their goals. Foundations and charities use sophisticated public relations campaigns to raise funds and employ standard lobbying techniques with governments. Interest groups may be of political importance because of their ability to influence social and political outcomes. A code of ethics was established in 2002 by the World Association of Non-Governmental Organizations. Project management. There is an increasing awareness that management techniques are crucial to project success in non-governmental organizations. Generally, non-governmental organizations that are private have either a community or environmental focus. They address varieties of issues such as religion, emergency aid, or humanitarian affairs. They mobilize public support and voluntary contributions for aid. They often have strong links with community groups in developing countries, and they often work in areas where government-to-government aid is not possible. NGOs are accepted as a part of the international relations landscape, and while they influence national and multilateral policy making, increasingly they are more directly involved in local action.